Now, have a listen to this.
Stop there, Tommy.
No, I'm not stopping here. You listen to me for a second. You're accusing members of my religion of engaging in brainwashing.
No, Tommy, you stop now!
Brainwashing is
No, listen
crime.
to me! You were not there at the beginning of that interview! You were not there! You did not hear or record all of the interview! Do you understand?
Brainwashing is a crime against humanity.
You are quoting the second half of the interview! Not the first half! You cannot assert what you're saying!
John Sweeney, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ray.
Is it still difficult to listen to that?
I apologise then and I apologise now. I mean, to all your listeners, it must sound like a kind of bad version of John Cleese going bonkers at Manuel in Fawlty Towers, but that is me and the Church of Scientology going at each other, hammer and tongs.
And that's Tommy Davis. And I was just looking at the documentary again to refresh my memory. You did one in 2007, a Panorama special, and 2010 again. And Tommy Davis was the man who was sort of charged with following you around when you went to investigate Scientology in America. And I was just thinking, if there was a movie made, oddly, and you were to cast somebody to play his part, who would you cast?
Tom Cruise.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
They were great. Apparently, now, by the way, you should know straight away that the Church of Scientology says that I'm a liar, a bigot, and psychotic. Church of Scientology blogger who said that I'm genuinely evil. And if you're seriously interested in Scientology, then perhaps you could go online and say what they say about themselves. And you could go to one of their places, but I personally wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, before we carry on, John, just if you were to meet a guy down the pub and he knew nothing about Scientology, what would you say to him? How would you explain it?
In one word, run. Run away.
No, but
in a more complicated way, I would say this. It's that people like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, they're the great showbiz stars. They say it helps them, it gives you a technology and it helps you communicate, it helps you become a better person. And pretty much they stop there. And ex-members of the church say something quite different. And as you know, I've done 2 documentaries and I've written a book about it called Church of Fear. And the thing the ex-members say is that it's a cult. It's a brainwashing cult, and it separates people from their families. Grannies don't talk to grandchildren, mothers don't talk to daughters. This thing, they say, is evil and dark. And it is essentially a confidence trick masquerading behind them as a religion, but it's not a religion. Again, a secret, and by the way, you might die if I tell you this, but I've been telling everybody I know, including millions of TV viewers, since 2007, and nothing's happened to me. I'm not very fit. I drink too much, but I'm still alive. It's the secret of Scientology, and it's this. 75 million years ago, a space alien, Satan, called Lord Zenu, brought space aliens to Earth, and he blew them up with hydrogen bombs inside volcanoes. And the remains of these dead, pesky space alien souls have infected our minds and our souls, and are the cause of all of humanity's problems today. Right. And only Scientology can clear away the dead space aliens. So you were screwed up, all your listeners are screwed up, and I'm very, very screwed up thanks to the dead space aliens.
And all of this was created by L. Ron Hubbard back in the 50s, and he was a science fiction writer, and then he wrote a self-help book. Dianetics, is it? Dianetics.
You're being polite.
Right.
Some people say he was a con man.
Right.
But what he did was he wrote bad science fiction, and then he wasn't making enough money out of that, and then he turned it into a bad religion. But there's a big issue, and in Britain to this day, the Charity Commission, who determine these things, say Scientology is not a religion. It's a business. They class it as a non-for-profit thing. They themselves do, the church do. And here's a simple reason. And all of your listeners will know there are many, many problems in all the world's great religions. Islam, Christianity, the Catholic priests and the paedophiles, the jihadis. Any religion, you can look at something. The Buddhists in Burma are killing the Muslims who live by the coast. There are problems everywhere. But in defence of the big religions, the great religions, if you go into a church, they'll tell you for free about baby Jesus, Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. You go to a mosque, they'll tell you about the prophet. You go to a synagogue, marry a nice Jewish boy, girl, don't eat bacon sandwiches, whatever. They won't tell you about the secret space alien stuff if you enter a Church of Scientology. You may spend 20 years, you may spend $500,000, maybe £1 million, euros, whatever, trying to find out, learning this great secret eventually. And that's a pay-as-you-go religion, and the British Charity Commissioners and I agree on this, that a pay-as-you-go religion isn't a religion.
Well, riddle me this. How has it lasted so long? Like, it's over 60 years in existence now.
That's a good question, and as you may know, I went undercover to North Korea, and I've been kind of rocketed by the Taliban in Pakistan and stuff like that. So I think, familiar with people who societies or who can get brainwashed, and I think that's what the jihadis in ISIS and the North Korean soldiers, they've been brainwashed. And the thing about brainwashing is you've got to have constriction of information. What's so strange and puzzling and frightening about the Church of Scientology is they managed to do this trick in Florida, in California, in London and in Dublin. Now, I think the simple answer is some of the people inside the church are the children, sometimes the grandchildren, of people who joined in the 50s, 60s and 70s. So you're looking at people who are second or third generation. One of my friends is Mark and Claire Headley, and they were the children of Scientologists who joined the Sea Org, the Church's Holy Order. And
that's like the
eventually
clergy.
they escaped.
Is that like the clergy of Scientology, the Sea Org?
Yeah, it's like the clergy, but it's a funny. Yes, that's exactly right. It is they call it their clergy, their holy order.
Yeah, and Claire, she got pregnant, and you weren't allowed to get pregnant when you were part of this clerical part of Scientology, and they didn't force her to have an abortion, or why did she feel pressured into it?
She had 2 abortions, but I think, and this is my view, and remember they call me psychotic, a bigot and a liar, I think they're in a state of mental kidnap and that they don't own their own minds. What was worse for Claire was that she was told you're not allowed children then. I think they've changed the rules, but you weren't allowed children in the Sea Org, and she wasn't allowed to discuss it with her husband, he was in California, she was in Florida, or vice versa, something like that. They were deliberately kept apart, they say, and so she had ended up having 2 abortions. This stuff is grim, and my big issue is the likes of Travolta and Cruise are great ambassadors for the church, but when they appear on chat shows in London and Dublin and in the States, nobody on the chat show ever asks, what about this thing Scientology are in? Do you think it's really good? Nobody ever asks that question.
It's odd.
That annoys me.
But it's odd because I had the pleasure of interviewing Michael Parkinson, and we were chatting before the interview, and I would be intrigued to hear what Tom Cruise had to say about Scientology, and I, like yourself, perplexed why nobody asks him about it. Obviously, it's a contractual thing. When I put it to Michael Parkinson, and this wasn't on air, I said to him, well, why didn't you ask about Scientology? And he says, it's a dead end. No point in asking any person about their personal beliefs because it's going nowhere and you just get them upset. So that was his answer.
I don't think it's a dead end because people...
But you got to interview a lot of the stars, not Tom Cruise, but Kirstie Alley, what's your one's name? Juliette Lewis, is it?
And Anne Archer, who was the woman whose bunny got boiled in Fatal Attraction.
Yeah. And how did you find them?
Nutters, to be honest. Right. They thought I was a bigot. But they were, as far as I could tell, all of them were... They have a thing in Scientology when you hit the wall of fire, which is the space alien massacre story, Lord Zenu, and that's operating Thetan level 3, and all of them were operating Thetan level 7, 8 or 9, and I believe, so that they'd passed that stage and they denied it. I asked them about Lord Zenu and they denied it. Now the point is they're denying it to save me. Or is it that they've been conned? Is it that they're living inside a confidence
Say
trap?
Tom Cruise, right? Tom Cruise, a brilliant actor. He's a very powerful man in Hollywood. He produces movies. He's not a stupid man. So how do you reconcile that with him being so involved in Scientology? What does he get from it, do you think?
Some people can be very streetwise and very smart and very clever and very foolish about another compartment in their life. So Tom Cruise is a great actor, and I've just watched his latest film, Live, Die, Repeat. By the way, there are a number of coded references to Scientology in it.
Is there? I've seen it. I enjoyed it, actually, Live, Die, Repeat, yeah. What are the coded references to Scientology?
It's like Groundhog Day, but with space aliens.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
To give away the plot, but Scientology hates psychiatry. Scientology says that psychiatry is a Nazi pseudoscience, and Cruise himself has said words to that effect. Now the point is that psychiatry down its history has made some grave mistakes. But essentially, it's an honest attempt by doctors and nurses to treat the mentally ill. And we all know that's not easy. But to condemn the whole thing as some kind of Nazi thing, that's nonsense. And anyway, there's a reference in that film, Live, Die, Repeat, to psychs. But if you sort of challenge the status quo, the psychs will come and get you. Uh-huh. And that's in the film. It's a nice little dramatic detail. But behind that, if you know your Scientology, that's a reference that Scientology would be familiar with. And then there's another riff going on as well, which is about, you wouldn't believe this. I'm trying to tell you the truth. So there's a thing that Cruise has got an urgent secret, which no one will believe him, no one credit him.
That sounds like a conspiracy theory to me, John. And watching your documentaries, I could understand why you'd be a little bit paranoid, because they did follow you and they turned up at your wedding. And you've had a number of run-ins with them, so I can understand why you become sort of conspiratorial in your thinking.
Whenever I'm doing a gig in Dublin next weekend, this weekend, and if anybody turns up in a black suit, white shirt, black tie, then I'll start getting the heebie-jeebies. But
because you recently lost your job in the BBC, and do you reckon that Scientology had something to do with that?
I don't know about that. I don't think, to be fair to the BBC, that there was a massive row in 2007. Apparently, the story goes, Travolta phoned up the Director General 8 times to get me the sack, but he wasn't in. The BBC say that they've made me and my colleagues redundant, 4 of us at Panorama, simply to save money. They need to save money. It's a different thing. But I do feel that the church would be glad to see the back of me, and I still don't see anybody in the entertainment end of the industry, and this just doesn't go for the BBC, it goes for all of the big broadcasters. When Cruise and Travolta pop up, no one ever asks them about Travolta.
Yeah.
It's an issue. By the way, I mean, they followed me. They deny following me. They don't. But one of the 2 guys who followed me, a guy called Mike Rinder, subsequently left the church, and he gave us 30 pages of BlackBerry text messages which clearly document him and Tommy Davis following me from Florida all the way across to California, spying on us. This is a church, I say, that spies and lies, and it's not really a religion in my view.
And I suppose what comes up over and over again is the difference between a religion and a cult.
Yes.
Well, what do you think is the difference?
The difference, a religion is a cult with lots of members. No, I'm joking. A cult's definition is that you have a messianic leader who has no accountability, some kind of human god. You have
David Miscavige, go on.
David Miscavige, they deny it. He's the leader, he's Tom Cruise's best friend, he is the Pope of Scientology. In my book, I've got some messages from him, or his office, which appear to be extremely rude. So rude I can't even broadcast them. Secondly, that it does some kind of brainwashing or thought reform. 3, it does harm. Now, you can say all the big religions do that, but I was brought up as a Catholic. I'm not one now. I was an altar boy. I wasn't abused. I don't know why. But nevertheless, when I was brought up as a Catholic in England, I didn't feel I was being brainwashed. I went to state schools here, and there was enough information from the outside world, from telly, from my friends who weren't Catholics, so and my parents weren't strict about it. Now, I think Catholic Ireland in the 50s, possibly you might have cultish things going on, and you can say that about other societies, other religions around the world. But essentially, it's the enforcement.
It's the money. Is it the money as well? The money and the brainwashing?
But the money is a big thing, but if you leave the church, if you're in the church, and in particular, if you're second or third generation, you've been born into it, then if you leave, then your family will cut you dead. And that's what happened to Mark Headley, that's what happened to Mike Rinder, and it's awful and tragic.
And that's why Beyond Belief is such an interesting read, and that was written by Jenna Miscavige, who is David Miscavige's niece.
Yes.
And she describes, it's an amazing read, because it is a bit like what I did this summer, as in like a school essay, but it lays out in all the detail how she was brought away to some sort of boot camp, separated from her parents, etc., etc. And it shows that in no way could this environment that she was brought up in claim to be a loving, caring environment, because it wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's it's a common story again and again and again, which I've heard from ex-members of the church. And there is the detail is extraordinary and extraordinarily powerful. If you say this, by the way, no major British publisher would publish my book.
That's why I had to buy a Kindle, John. So you
can you can now hit a button and it goes prints on demand, so you can get a paperback version these days.
Okay, you're right. Okay,
but it's but that's depressing. I mean, I believe that people have a right to believe in whatever they want to believe in, and I will defend that, and that includes Scientology. People have a right to be Scientologists if they want to be, but equally, I have a right, and you have a right. We all do, to mock, to question, to criticise, and the two rights, the right to believe and the right to mock, the right to ask questions, should both be equal. Right. And it seems unfair and wrong if people have a right to believe, but other people haven't got a right to say, hold on a second, do you really, are you sure about this?
You're speaking on Friday and Saturday, Scientology, Enough's Enough, where former members will talk about their experiences. And if you put Dublin and Scientology into Google, you'll get that. John Sweeney, author of The Church of Fear, Inside the Weird World of Scientology. Thanks for talking to us.